The previous video in this series explored the Rifle Squad's organization. This video will cover its movement formations and techniques, at least as far as the approach march is concerned. I will leave the conduct of patrols for a separate video. Despite what Hollywood would have you believe, infantrymen advanced in various set formations, the geometry of which changed depending on the situation. But far too many World War II movies depict infantrymen huddled close together in a mob as they creep into enemy territory. Now, it's easy to understand why you'd want your characters close together on film. The director needs to arrange all of his principal actors in the same shot, so distances between our heroes are necessarily reduced, just as engagement ranges are often drastically decreased on screen. But unlike celluloid soldiers, actual GIs would have endured hours of extended order drill, where they practice getting into and out of and switching between various coordinated tactical formations. There was nothing haphazard about the approach march. Every soldier in the squad would know exactly where he was expected to be when the squad leader signaled column, line, wedge, or diamond. The squad leader controlled and regulated his squad's movement. He selected the appropriate route of advance and ensured that the squad maintained proper speed and direction, and altered its formation to meet the terrain and circumstances. Platoon, section, and squad leaders deploy, assemble, and maneuver their units as far as practicable by arm signals. The first formation we'll look at is the column, which had two main variations, closed and opened. Closed squad column was a simple file, while the open squad column was more dispersed. The squad column was the quickest and easiest to control. Squad column, either opened or closed, is vulnerable to hostile fire from the front and requires a change of formation to permit the employment of all the squad's weapons to the front, but is easily controlled and maneuvered. It is suitable for crossing areas exposed to artillery fire and for movement in woods, fog, smoke, and darkness. Squad column opened provides some degree of all-around protection and is suitable for crossing open country. Squad column closed is suitable for moving through narrow defiles and along trails. Both formations facilitate immediate action toward the flanks. The assistant squad leader is usually posted in rear of the squad to prevent straggling, to prevent elongation or closing up of the squad, and to ensure its orderly advance. Next there was the skirmish line, or line of skirmishers, or simply as skirmishers. This was the basic fighting formation of the squad. During the firefight and assault, soldiers were usually abreast as skirmishers. As skirmishers is less vulnerable to hostile fire from the front, and enables the squad to employ its weapons to the front without change of formation, but it is more difficult to control than either the squad column formations. It is adapted to rapid dashes across open spaces, particularly shelled areas. FM 22.5 Infantry Drill Regulations notes that the squad leader is in front of his squad when it is advancing. When it halts to fire, he drops back behind the line to a position where he can control his squad and observe to the front. When the war began, the intermediate formation being taught was the squad wedge. In a letter home written on 6 September 1943, while training at Fort Leavenworth, a recruit describes extended order drill. This last is squad tactics for actual battle conditions, and the main dispositions are closed and extended squad column, squad wedge, and line of skirmishers. The wedge formation was an intermediate step between line and column, and provided some degree of protection to both the front and flanks. The squad wedge was officially rescinded with the publication of an updated FM 22.5 in September of 1943, and the diamond formation was introduced in its place as the new disposition of readiness. Diamond formation combines most of the advantages with few of the disadvantages of the other two dispositions. It is especially adapted to situations where readiness for action in any direction is required, and is frequently used when emerging from cover or from a defile. It is also adapted to take best advantage of cover on broken ground and for traversing zones near the enemy but beyond effective rifle range of known hostile positions. This formation turns up often in memoirs from the ETO. Charles F. Richardson, a BAR gunner from the 30th Infantry Division, describing an attack near Aachen, recalled, "My platoon was the point platoon, and my squad was the point. We were in a diamond formation with the two scouts out. The squad leader, Red, was next in line with my assistant BAR man, Patton, a few steps to left and rear of Red. I was to Red's right. The rest of the squad followed in their positions." As mentioned, these formations were practiced routinely, and a soldier was always aware of his number in the squad. A GI training in April of 1944 recalled, "He told me, he said, 'Joe, I don't believe I'll make it.' I said, 'Man, don't talk to me that way.' He said, 'I just have a feeling. It's a gut feeling I'll never make it.' I said, 'Simeon, you're rifleman number 7 and I'm rifleman number 8. We were buddies. Everything we did was a buddy system, everything in the infantry. You'll notice the squad diamond formation featured buddy pairs at the 4 points of the diamond, and riflemen 7 and 8 were the pair on the right flank. The skirmish line was also revised at this time to keep pairs together. Let's take a step back and look at the standard ways to transition between these formations. At the start of the war, the line initially deployed from column by splitting odds and evens to the left and right. There were also 2 additional variants at this time, as skirmishers left and as skirmishers right, in which the entire squad swung to one side. The late 1943 skirmish line changed this by keeping pairs like riflemen 7 and 8 together. The flanking pairs rushed forward to take positions on both the left and right of the scouts, while the BAR team and trailing pair closed with the squad leader and deployed either left or right at his discretion. Deployment as skirmishers is made at a run. Other movements are made at a walk unless otherwise ordered. The same procedure was used when transitioning from diamond formation to as skirmishers. Here's what an early war column to wedge to line deployment looked like, and here's the typical later war column to diamond to line. That's at least how they were trained. This is all straight out of the field manuals. As always, all of this could vary from unit to unit, and you can dig up examples of various experimental formations that were being pioneered. So this may not be how your old Uncle Frank actually did it, but it was invariably how he was trained to do it. This was the Army way. Yet another change occurred very late in the war. When the Able Baker Charlie Squad organization was adopted, as discussed in my previous video, formations were altered accordingly. Squad column remained the same, but the diamond formation was dropped, and the skirmish line was adapted to keep each team intact. There were 2 variations to the line formation when as skirmishers left and as skirmishers right made their return. The direction in the name identified which side of Able Team Charlie was to deploy, with Baker on the opposite side. In other words, at the command as skirmishers right, the Baker team with its automatic rifle went left, while the riflemen of Charlie went right. The reverse was the case for as skirmishers left, with Baker right and Charlie left. This didn't represent a major change in this formation, but it just made things simpler by keeping the rifle team together on one side of the scouts. This allowed for the quick and clean attachment of the scouts to either the rifle or automatic rifle teams. Ordinarily, these formations were not to exceed 60 or 70 paces in any direction, and soldiers were trained to maintain intervals of at least 5 paces. That's 12.5 feet or nearly 4 meters. That way one mortar round doesn't wipe out the whole squad. But these intervals could contract and expand, and depending on factors such as enemy and terrain, the squad leader could have his scouts or a flank pair quite a bit further away from the rest of the squad to provide security, as long as the inside man was in visual range of the squad leader. The rifle squad employed various methods of advance, generally getting slower but more secure as probability of enemy contact increased. While a squad could travel rapidly together when contact with the enemy was remote, it traveled with scouts out when contact was likely. Movements may be interrupted by the signal or command halt or down. On halting, a deployed line faces to the front, direction of the enemy. If halted by the command down, the men take cover. The squad leader may direct lesser or greater intervals and distances, and individual skirmishers may vary their positions so as to take full advantage of cover and concealment. Close grouping in the open is avoided, but 2 or 3 men may group together to take advantage of suitable cover and concealment. When contact was imminent, the squad could remain behind cover while the scouts advanced. Deployed in pairs, at wide and irregular intervals, they move out boldly to the front to reconnoiter successive positions, objectives, along their route of advance, and seek to force enemy riflemen and machine guns to disclose their position. In approaching houses, natural defiles, and villages, one scout of each pair covers the movement and reconnaissance of the other. When the scout signaled him forward, the squad leader could move up the rest of the squad and send his scouts forward again. In this most cautious approach, the squad could bound to successive march objectives in a manner that limited their exposure to the enemy, but took the most time. So it was ill-suited when rapidity was essential, but it was the safest technique. Whichever technique was utilized, it continued until the squad reached its first firing position, or they were fired upon by the enemy, at which point the approach march ended and the firefight commenced. But unfortunately for you, and for me who has to make it, that is a topic for the next video. For now, you've made it to the end.